Hey everyone, welcome back. I know it's been a week or so, maybe more. But I just didn't have any ink to print out my stuff that I find my information on. And so with that being said, let's continue. And yes, we are still in Louisiana. If you get my drift. And this one is creepy. Because I remember this story from when I was young, and it creeped me out, and I'm like, that's what the story was. I knew there was something really creepy in Louisiana, but I couldn't remember it. And then when I looked it up a few nights ago, I'm like, there, that's it. And if you're wondering, this was my dog. Not Bruce, my dog, who is currently eating a treat. If you hear chewing, it's her. Anyway, let's continue our tour in Louisiana. And this time, it's not a house or a building. It's a swamp. Swamps are a favorite setting for many horror stories, mainly in the vein of the backwoods inbred animal families. Inbred animal troops aside, though, swamps do to conjure eerie feelings. Eerie feelings that, and probably mental images of Spanish monks hiding from the cypress dangling over dark and muddy waters. In the United States, there will also meet alligators and venomous pit vipers lurking in the submerged ghost stones long ago lost by rising waters. Right outside of New Orleans, Louisiana, in St. John's Baptist Parish, there used to be a town called Frender. It disappeared over 100 years ago. But some say the manic swamp where Frender used to be is now haunted. Louisiana is one of the only states, not regionally, the only state in the United States with parishes instead of countries. Now, New Orleans is quite famous for a lot of things like Mardi Gras celebrations and rites and the French Quarter. It also happens to be responsible for the creation of jazz music, burr whiskey, dental floss, which I didn't know, and a whole lot more. It turns out Manic Swamp is pretty easy to find in the greater New Orleans area today because Louisiana built a bridge over it called Manic Swamp Bridge. Because Louisiana built a bridge, Manic Swamp Bridge isn't just any old bridge. On the United States interstate, any old bridge. It is one of the longest bridges in the world that runs over water, with a length of 22.80 miles, 36.69 kilograms. It is also the longest bridge in the United States interstate highway system. Just imagine driving over the Manic Swamp Bridge during the night. Your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. And you pull off to the shoulder, no other vehicles in sight, and if you take a walk, you're in for one hell of a hike, and to get back to come on. Cursing under your breath, about never getting around to changing those batteries, you remember something about Manic Swamp. The manic wetlands about half an hour northwest of New Orleans, or thick swamp ooze. In the summer, the water is pea green, covered in tiny leaves and crawling with insects that hide in the shadows of the ancient gray cypress trees. The boaters who enter the swamps face two main threats. Aside from a sunstroke and dehydration, the alligators, who mostly lurk just outside of view, and the broken logs that float through the muck, remains in the days that the swamp was home to the now abandoned logging town of Runarock. But some say everyone entering the swamp beware of a more supernatural threat. The curse of Julia Brown, the local voodoo queen. Julia Brown, sometimes also known as Julia White or Black, is described in local legends as a voodoo princess who lived in the edge of the swamp and worked with. Hello? Calming the wind outside. Who worked with residents of the town of Foreigner. She was known for her charms and her curses, as well as singing eerie songs with her guitar on the porch. One of the most memorable and disturbing with when one day I'm going to die and the whole town will come with me. Back when Brown was alive, and the turn of the 20th century, the town of Roanoke and Neptune were prosperous settlements clustered on the edge of the lake of Pontchartrain. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Situated by logging the century-old cypress trees and farming cabbages in the thick black soil. The railroad was the town's lifeline, bringing groceries from New Orleans and hauling away logs and cabbages as far as Chicago. They had no roads, no doctors, no electricity, and had to manage to carve out cohesive and self-reliant communities. Why are you licking my pant, dog? I'm literally licking my pants. That all changed on September 29th, 1915, when a massive hurricane swept from the Caribbean, and this was before hurricanes were named, so I tried to find a name for anything before I realized that, and it's literally called the unnamed cyclone. In Foreigner, where Julia lived, the storm surge rose 13 feet and the winds howled at 125 miles an hour, mainly of the townsfolk, all to hot refuge in the railroad depot, which collapsed and killed 25 people. Although close to 300 people in Louisiana died, with almost 60 in Fraser and Roanoke alone. When the storm cleared on October 1st, Farrader, Roanoke, and Nippon had to be entirely destroyed. Homes flattened, buildings demolished, and miles of railway tracks washed away. One of the few survivors later described how he clung up to a upturned cypress tree and shut his ears against the screaming of those dowling in the swamp. The hurricane seemed to come out of nowhere. But if you listen to the guides who take tourists to the magic swamp, the storm was a result of the wrath of Julia Brown. They say Brown laid a curse on the town because she felt taken for granted. A curse that came true when the storm swept through on the day of her funeral, killing everyone around. On certain tours, the guides take you through the past a run-down swamp graveyard marked 1915. It's a prop, but it's a good place to tell people Brown's ghost still haunts the swamp, as do the souls that perished during the hurricane. The legend of Julia Brown became the area's most popular ghost story, spreading to paranormal shows, even Reddit, where some claim to have seen Julia Brown crackling at the edge of a swamp. City's record suggests that Brown Renard in Louisiana around 1845, then married a log labor named Celestin Brown in 1880. About 20 years later, the federal government gave her husband a 40-acre homestead plot to farm. Property that likely passed on to Julia after her husband's death around 1914. Official censuses and property records don't make any mention of Brown's voodoo work, but that's not surprising. Modern New Orleans voodoo priestess Bloody Mary, that is a very unusual name, hold mental flaws that she found references to a voodoo priestess or queen by the name of Brown who worked in New Orleans around the 1860s. Before moving out to Freyer, Mary notes that because the town had no doctors, and so was the wooden box, but the casket was never to be found. Voodoo isn't as much as about hurts as it is about healing, he said. The locals he spoke into remember Julia as a beloved local healer, not a revengeful type. In fact, Mary suggested that Julia's song may have been more of a warning to the townsfolk than a curse against them. Perhaps even Brown tried to perform an anti-storm ritual and was unable to stop the hurricane before it was too late. Whatever she did, Mary said it wasn't out for malevolence, and she is still in the swamp. If you ever go in the swamp and you hear singing from not modern days, it most likely will be Julia. And the screamings and cries that you hear, the victims from the hurricane. I know this video was a lot more creepier than the others. Probably all of them. And I have to say, it's probably one of my favorite videos I ever talked about. I really love the curse Julia Brown story, and I would highly love to go to Louisiana and probably find the swamp. If I ever do get to go there, I'm definitely bringing the camera. Thank you guys for watching my channel and videos. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I am Haunted Girl, and this is my channel. The paranormal is my playground. I'll spook you later. Until next time, pleasant dreams.